Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another update on the Kubota. I currently have 8 hours on the tractor, and so far so good. There's a few maintenance items that I want to take care of that you're supposed to when you get to 8 hours. Today we're going to look at the snowblower and the KConnect module. The model I do have is the BX 2816 and then the KConnect module. There's only a few little things that you got to look at when you get to 8 hours. Just a few little checks to make sure everything's working right and not falling apart, basically. So one thing is the drive chain adjustment. So in the manual, well, you guys can see that, but you had to adjust your drive chain. This is on the back of your snowblower, within a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch in the deflection of the chain. And if you go over, if the two sprockets, the center of the sprockets are more than 4 1/8 inch apart, the chain has to be replaced. But I don't think I'm going to have that issue if I only got 8 hours on the tractor. And then in the KConnect module, a couple things you got to check. One being you got to check all the hydraulic hoses and things like that. Make sure nothing's leaking and everything's tight. And make sure all your greasing and all that stuff is up to date. So we're going to get into it. Kind of a step-by-step guide. I got all things removed, but I'll show you guys that as we go. Alright, here we go. Alright guys, so the first thing I want to go over is your gearbox on the front of your snowblower. When you first get your snowblower, first thing you should do with this is get a screwdriver or something and chip off the top of this nut, because there is a vent for allow pressure out, and when you're filling it up and checking the oil, you can lift that up and it lets the pressure out of your gearbox, because they come painted shut basically from the factory. Then you need to take this set screw out, because this is your level indicator. So when I first got mine, I did this, took this out, and the gearbox must have been full, because that drained for about 5 minutes before it got down to that level and started to slow down. So once I got down to this level, I put this screw back in. So take this out, get your vent open so it drains good, and if nothing comes out, there's not enough in it, which that happens too. And then, but if there is too much, which usually what ends up being, just let it drain out so it'll get down to proper level, because you don't want too much in it, because that'll build up a high pressure in your gearbox, right? So for this, you got to use an 80W90 high pressure gearbox oil. So any brand is good, right? It's a pretty normal oil, so you don't need nothing special from Kubota for that. Another thing to mention about snowblowers is when you first get them, they're beautiful, orange, shiny. 8 hours later, it looks like this. So don't be worried if your snowblower looks like it's been through basically the war, right? But that's the way they end up, especially if you have a gravel driveway, which I don't. It's only a paved driveway, so I can only imagine if I had a gravel driveway what this would look like. But it's metal, it's strong, it's gonna hold up. Let's keep some WD-40 or something like that to it, and that'll keep the rust down. So the next thing is your drivetrain. So how you do it is there's usually a cover. As a cover comes on like this. There's 2 bolts that go on either side, and the threads are already in the plate, so you don't got to worry about no nuts falling off and going down inside. So when I took mine off, it was about a 1/2 inch deflection on it, which is what I expected. You know, coming from the factory, that's normal. A new chain is going to stretch. So how you adjust it is there's 2 bolts on either side. You don't have to take them all the way out. Just take them out basically to the ends of the threads. more on that side. And once you got them loosened, there's a black plate here that slides, that has the sprocket, the bottom sprocket attached. So let's give that a couple little taps on either side. And as you're going, just check with your finger the chain. It's a hard thing to measure with something. You almost just want to eyeball it, and you can see how much the chain is moving, right? So if it's moving, if it's really, really, really tight, you need to loosen it off a bit and bring the plate back up. But what I did, I just loosened the bolts and just 1 or 2 taps either side, and it got tight enough, and that was all there was to it. And then you just tighten your nuts back up, and you're good to go. Just make sure one side isn't lower than the other, or something like that, right? With this chain, you have to grease it every 4 hours. So what I use is a Motomaster chain lube. It's a heavier oil, right? I got this at Canadian Tire for all my Canadian friends, and down in the States, I'm sure there's some kind of spray can you guys can get. But in the manual, they do say use a heavy chainsaw oil. But that is a heavy oil, and it works well. You don't have to take the cover off to do that. There is a hole in top of the cover, and you can just stick the straw down inside and spray it down in. Make sure you're getting the chain. Don't be afraid to use a lot. You can't use too much. Just put something underneath your snowblower so you don't make a mess, basically. So besides that, after your 8 hours, you check that chain adjustment tension, and then you do it about every 24 hours. And then if the distance between the middle of the top sprocket and the middle of the bottom sprocket gets more than 4 1/8 of an inch, I think, you will need to replace the chain, which I'm not sure how many hours that would be, but I guess that's trial and error. So with the KConnect module, there's 4 bolts in the top cover, 1/2 inch. Actually, everything here was 1/2 inch, so that was nice, because that usually don't happen. So you take them 4 bolts out, and inside you got your little engagement mechanism. You got a knuckle here with a grease nipple on it. Every 20 hours, I believe, is what you got to do there. When I took this off for the first time, this is the first time I took this off in 8 hours. I went over and just re-greased everything, because you don't know. You just don't want to trust the people at the factory and the people at the dealership. Make sure they got everything greased on your tractor. So just go over everything with your grease gun again. You'll thank yourself later. So there's one in here. There's one here. It's kind of hard to see there, but there's another knuckle there with another grease nipple. There's one on the back on the bearing that comes out of the KConnect module with the shaft. There's another knuckle there with that one. And then all the way on the back where it connects on the PTO, there's another grease nipple. So there's lots of grease nipples, which is a good thing because it cuts down your maintenance big time. One thing I wanted to mention about your KConnect module and engaging. So when you engage the mechanism, when you attach the KConnect module to the snowblower, you can't see what's going on down here. So I mentioned in another video about doing this, but I'm going to show you this so you can visually see what I'm talking about. So right now it's not engaged. So let's say you engage the KConnect. As you see, it doesn't line up. The two mechanisms doesn't line up. So that's all fine. That's normal. But imagine you got your tractor at a higher RPM, which you shouldn't have to do when you're engaging this, but it does happen. You forget yourself. So say you got it at a higher RPM and you engage your PTO, and then that all of a sudden snaps into place, which, and over time, doing that multiple times is going to cause wear on the mechanism here, right? So what I like to do, when I engage it, and this handle doesn't go all the way over, so I know this is what's going on, I'll just come around to the front and just reach in and grab the auger and give it a little twist. And and it snaps in, right? And then you're locked in. You don't got to worry about tearing up the little studs on either side of this, right? You're locked in. Keep your RPMs low when you engage your PTO, and you won't have any issues with that. But besides that, make sure you go retighten all your nuts and bolts. There's lots of stuff going on down here. It's easy for someone to have missed it. But just go over, get the proper socket sizes, retighten everything. There is a torque sheet in the manual for the snowblower and the KConnect. But usually, mostly, the only time you need to re-torque something is if you're actually removing something like you're doing with the shield. You actually, want to re-torque it and things like that. But if you're not removing a bolt and you're just going over and make sure it's tight, this stuff was torqued in the beginning. So just go over, if it's tight, you're good to go. But besides that, that's basically all the maintenance. Make sure your hoses, your hydraulic hoses, nothing's leaking and things like that. I don't have any issues with that. Right, it all looks good. Right, no leaks so far. I hear a lot of issues about the quick coupler for the loader. I haven't had much time on the loader, so I can't speak to that yet, but I see a lot of people changing out the quick connect to the single disconnects, right? So maybe that's something I'll have to do, and if I do, I'll have to do another video on it. But so far, I got 8 hours. I don't have any leaks, so I'm very happy that way. I'll probably just jinx myself, but we'll see how that goes. One other thing too is not really related to the snowblower or the KConnect, but when I first got my tractor, first day I used it, I dropped it. The salesperson dropped it off. He went over everything with me. He actually checked all the levels in the driveway, and everything was good where it was supposed to be. He checked the front axle. He checked the transmission fluid. Checked the engine oil. Everything was where it should be. I used the tractor for probably about an hour. Came in, checked the engine oil. Perfect. Came in, checked transmission fluid. There was nothing on the dipstick. So, contacted him. He supplied me with a bottle of oil. It took about 1.5 liters of oil. So make sure when you get your tractor, check your oils. And that was the same thing with my front axle fluid. Now, within the first 5 hours, it was perfect. I checked it every time before I went out. One day, first time I put it in high gear, I traveled down the road to my buddy's house and did his driveway. And when I came back, the next day I checked the front axle oil, and there was nothing on the dipstick. So I guess when I got more speed up, got the oil moving more and stuff like that. But that actually took another, I don't know, it's about half a liter of oil. So make sure when you get your tractor, check your oils, because you don't want to trust that guy that was in the factory or at your dealership, right? They're doing this all day long. It's easy to forget something. This is your tractor. Make sure you take care of it yourself. Check your oils. Keep your stuff greased. It's like your snowblower. I like to put WD-40 all over the front of my snowblower first when I got it. It do make a little bit of a mess, but keeps the rust down, keeps stuff moving, keeps the snow off the chute and things like that. Right? But besides that, that's basically all the maintenance you got to do on your snowblower and your KConnect module. There's other things in the manual. Just go over manual. You got to grease all your pivot points and stuff like that every so often. But that's your main stuff. Your gearbox, your drive chain, and grease up your knuckles. And make sure when you engage that mechanism is you do it at a low RPM. Because if not, you're going to tear that up. But I hope this helps someone, guys. This is first time with a tractor or anything like that. It's going great. I'm enjoying it. Not have any issues so far, knock on wood. So, have a good day, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe.